All right, so I wanted to spend today's live session just going over part four of the class because the whole thing about going through parts two, three, and four of the class is recognizing that we're actually building something. We're building a framework with which we can see social life and begin to understand it critically and systematically, so we can start to explain why people are similar, why people are different, and with those understandings look at the role of institutions, culture, and social psychology. So as I say in the lecture, for this period, the order of the framework was arbitrary, meaning we could have started out the semester with institutions and concluded the semester with culture. But I think this works the best in terms of institutions really connecting the dots among the three, but also institutions tend to be um, more difficult. Now, I wouldn't say difficult, but we tend to oversee institutions and underestimate their roles in social life as a whole. So that's why I kind of wanted to finish with that, so we can start to pay a little bit more mind, a little bit more attention to institutions. So basically, when we get to part four of the class, we can ask two questions. If culture is so important because it basically gives us the rules of the game, because it shapes our social psychology, where does culture come from? And to answer that question, we'll look at institutions producing cultural ways. And then a second question we can look at is, where do people internalize culture? So where do people make culture part of their social psychology? Again, we'll turn our attention to social institutions. So here I want to basically, define what an institution is. So an institution is a sphere of social life that's organized to meet certain human needs. And so we can basically say it's a sphere of life that's organized and it serves specific functions for social life as a whole. So the institution of a family is organized and it's there to provide care and nourishment. You care for people, you help them develop. That's kind of the main functions of the family. A religion is there to kind of provide us understandings of the mysterious, kind of navigating the spiritual life. Media is there to provide information to the public, but also to entertain people. Economy is producing goods, consuming goods, and organizing it. And then governments provide law and order. Sports would be another institution we could talk about. So nevertheless, here's the first point I want to stop and get it more into not the function of each institution, but the organization. So let me pull up the chat and I'll throw it out to you guys. So within the institution of the family, what's one kind of organizing principle? What's one way we organize the institution so it can operate smoothly? So, here I'm asking you to identify, a couple different roles in the family, and then we can really see the order. Yeah, very good. So we have a comment that says from oldest to youngest. So definitely you see this kind of the immediate family. You'll divide up the division of labor in a household, for example, based upon age. Often, if you give younger kids any duties, will be relatively easy things to do. But if older children will get a little bit more labor intensive type responsibilities. So again, age would be kind of a variable that you see kind of pop up. Younger kids maybe have an earlier curfew compared to older kids. The division of labor will be allocated accordingly. So very good. So that's what we're looking at. It's organized, and through that organization, things can get done. So let's come up with one more besides age. Yeah, so very good. So two just came in looking at sex and gender. So yeah, definitely kind of see that going on. And it could be again with children. So you may have twins, so they're the same age, but maybe you can use their sex to divide up the labor differently. Typically, you see a division of labor based upon sex and gender. And the boys and the men have a lot more outdoor responsibilities, mowing, taking out the trash, working on, maybe painting a fence or a house. And then indoor responsibilities typically are allocated to girls and women, you know, food, cleaning, laundry, so on and so on. So again, it doesn't have to be this way, and you'll see variations in families, especially, for example, if you're a single parent family. Like I have a neighbor down the street who is a single mother, and so she's doing the outdoor work. She's mowing the lawn, she's raking, and I'll assume she's doing the indoor work too. I don't spy on her, so I really don't know that for a fact. But here's the idea that it doesn't have to be this way. You'll see situations where things are kind of turned around a little bit, but nevertheless, it can be used as a principal organization, sex and gender, just as age. And so, just one more I'll throw out there. Um, kind of this the idea attached to the role of a husband, ideas attached to the role of a wife, the role of a brother and sister. And by that, I mean, typically, a brother is supposed to look after the sister, even in circumstances where maybe the brother is a little bit younger, but still him being the male kind of surpasses the age gap and still kind of makes him responsible for his sister. And the same thing where, division of labor often is gendered, but if you have a husband and a wife, those carry different responsibilities as well. Husband typically are associated with more about protecting the family financially, uh, physically, and the wife responsibilities typically are based more upon nurturing the family, both the husband and the children. So again, we'll see differences, but again, the big picture is each institution has organization. In the media, you have writers, you have producers, you have the people in front of the camera, whether it be a newscaster or actor. So everybody kind of has their different part, and with that organization, if everybody plays their part properly, then we get movies to watch. The family can function as a whole, and so that's what we're looking at here. So now I'll turn our attention back to the slides. And here, basically, we look at those connections. Institutions provide us social spaces. So, the classroom for the institution of education, the family room, the institution of the family, the field, the court, and the institution of sport. So each one provides us a space in which we interact with people. And it's in these spaces you see culture being produced. The parent producing a certain culture and socializing the child within that culture. The coach providing a certain culture for the players, and the players kind of learning that culture. So within the space of the institution, culture is being produced by people within the institution, and we call these people institutional agents. Parents within the family, priests, for example, in institutional religion, teachers in schools, writers and media, politicians and government. And these people are producing culture, ideas, meanings. And when we're exposed to that culture, we're making it part of our social psychology. So here's where we connect those dots. You have the production of culture going on by the institutional agents, and other people within the space, your peers as well, can produce culture and you can learn it. And within that space, you kind of connect culture to your social psychology. So again, all three pieces come together. And a third function is you organize people and institutions based upon the characteristics. So like we just talked about, in the family, you use sex, you use age to kind of divide up everybody and organize the institution. And the same thing holds true for the economy and stuff like that. How much taxes you pay is based upon your class. Um, Maybe within education, what type of scholarships you qualify for based upon your sex or based upon your race or your class background. And so basically, you see an institution and they're producing cultures within the institution. People learn culture, make it part of the social psychology. And within institutions, you kind of divide people up according to social characteristics such as sex, race, and class. And like we talked about, age. So here again, we see all the pieces come together where we can connect the dots: culture to institutions, culture to social psych, institutions to social psych to institutions. So here, let me stop and I'll turn it back over to you guys in the chat. So just thinking about the last, let's say, 48 hours, try to come up with a short list of different institutions that you've been in, you've participated in. So I'll start. So looking back to Wednesday, I, basically woke up in the institution of the family, and then I went to the institution of work, and then I engaged with the institution of media, and I, participated in institution of sport. So that's when you kind of look at it. We don't think about our lives like this. If you really break it down, on a day-to-day basis, we're basically participating in different social institutions, throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. So just recognizing how basically we're jumping around from one institution to another, we can recognize how important institutions are because they provide us the culture we're socialized in. They provide us the cultural ways that shape our social psychological ways. So we have one person that's talked about participating in religion, school, and family. If you voted on Tuesday, then you participated in government. If you've been following the election results, you've been interacting with media. And so again, the type of media you interact with will kind of shape the culture you're exposed to. So, if you're watching one news channel reporting the election, they may have their own little spin they put on it compared to another news channel. They may have their other cultural spin they put on it. So just because you're interacting with the media doesn't mean it's going to be the same culture you're exposed to and the same impact on your social psychology. Yeah, so another student says, family, school, work, sport, media. So yeah, if you really think about it like that, then that's all we basically do is kind of interact with institutions in one way or another. And when we're kind of out in our leisure time, maybe with friends, we're still kind of part of an economy, kind of consuming things, buying things, spending money. So, that's kind of why I like to wait till the last part of the class for this. We see how it connects to culture. We see how it connects to social psychology. We kind of recognize that, yeah, institutions are important because they basically, they shape our lives. And even when we're not, voting or something like that, when we're driving, we have to abide by speed limits. If you're going out for dinner and you want to drink alcohol, you have to abide by laws of drinking. So again, here's the government kind of shaping our lives in terms of what is normal, what we can do, what we can't do. So, overall, we kind of break it down like that. You start to see how significant institutions are because they kind of shape our everyday lives, where we are, what we're doing, how we're doing it. But they're also significant because they produce that culture we're exposed to. And that culture is basically shaping our social psychology, and the institutions provide us the spaces, the classroom, the religious service place you go to, the sport you're watching or you're playing, all those things are basically, making culture part of our social psychology. And again, you can apply this to ourselves, social life in the United States. but the same application can go on in any society you look at. The institutions will be the same, family, sports, religion, but how they do the institution may differ. The type of religion, how the family is organized, the type of sports you're playing. So again, the framework will be the same, but what's going on kind of within the framework may differ from one society to another. So any thoughts or any questions about this? Okay. So, I won't get into this because, this is what I did in the lecture. But, basically, what we do for the articles in part 4 of the class, yes, we look at institutions, but also we try to connect the dots to culture and social psych as well. So basically, as you go through this lecture, as you go through the reading, we'll talk about kind of all pieces of the puzzle. So how the institutions of government, medicine, changed the culture, produced new cultural ways, specifically surrounding meanings attached to medical marijuana, and then how the changing culture changed people's social psychology about medical marijuana. In the past, it was defined in one way, culturally speaking. People thought about it one way as a result, but then the culture changed around it, and so did people's thoughts. And then you could see that same kind of change going on today over the last 10 years, where institutions again are changing. And with the institutional changes, we have cultural changes. And with those cultural changes, people start to change their minds as well. On Tuesday, I believe 5 states voted to legalize recreational marijuana. And so again, there's been a lot of changes going on since the 1980s or early 90s. And we can't say that the changes happened out of nowhere. We have to recognize institutional changes, changing the culture surrounding marijuana use, and how the changing culture changes the social psychology to the degree now where people don't see it as some demon drug, but something that should be legalized for medical or recreational purposes. Regulated, but nevertheless legalized. Much different compared to when I was growing up and being educated about it during the early 90s, so on and so on. So at this point, I'll stop the recording for today. Thanks for joining and participating. Feel free to hang out and talk to me, discuss anything if you have any questions. Otherwise, feel free to go. Enjoy the weekend. It's going to be a beautiful weather before it starts to get a little bit colder. So enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.